J.D. Vance or Gavin Newsom? Who will win the 2028 election? Look, I've got a curveball. I'm going to say neither. And I'm not saying neither to replace J.D. Vance with Marco Rubio or Gavin Newsom with Kamala Harris. I think a third party has a legitimate chance to win. No, a lot of people are going to laugh at this. A lot of people say, oh, every single election cycle, somebody says a third party could win. They said RFK could win when he get 2 or 3%. Maybe it was a little higher than 4 or 5. But regardless, every single year, people kind of say the same thing again and again. And it's not even competitive. There's not even a legitimate chance that they could even win a state. But, if we're looking at the 2028 landscape, Donald Trump currently has a 37% approval rating. And Joe Biden, when he left office, was at 40%. I think it was probably lower than that, if we're being honest. But this is what we got. These are the numbers we've got. And in 2028, obviously, Trump is not running again. Or, legally, he probably shouldn't be able to. But regardless, Trump is not running. So J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, whoever's running on the Republican side is going to get less than 37%. Because you can only transfer kind of the cult-like following to so many of your base people. They're going to say, I'm only voting for you. And some of them might say, I want to vote for a Democrat, or I want to vote for a third party, or I want to stay home. So 37% that's the ceiling. That's the best case scenario. If Trump can somehow transfer all 37% to J.D. Vance, which isn't going to happen. It's not going to happen. I think best case scenario is you can transfer 80%. You could end up having 30% of the nation support you. And Joe Biden, when he left office, I think most people, even if you don't like him, they'd say he's a generally likable guy. He's not super controversial. So he was able to get a lot of the moderate support, the moderate Republicans, moderate Democrats, and a lot of the super left-wing people were like, I guess we'll tolerate him to get Trump out of office. The left-wing people, they're completely off ship. They don't want him. They don't want Harris. They don't want Newsom. They don't want any of those people. They don't feel like they're too far left. They're too liberal. They're too conservative. They're kind of moderates. They view Joe Biden as a moderate. And really everybody else that has a real chance to win 2020. So you're going to have a Democrat, probably Newsom, maybe Harris. Maybe you get a Josh Shapiro or Adam Beshear. Doesn't really matter. They're all the same people. Legitimately, they are all the same people in the eyes of the average American. The average American says either those people are way too far left for me, those people are way too far right for me. And then on the Republican side, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, it doesn't matter, Tucker Carlson. Those people are pretty much all the same people. Either you're fine voting for them because they kind of target your demographic, you're in the Trump group and you're fine, supporting whoever Trump picks, or you're not. And we're looking at, 30% of America will support whoever Trump picks. I think that's a good case scenario. And what are we going to get? 25, 30% of the Americans will support the rebranded sort of left-wing Gavin Newsom, but he's also not left-wing because he doesn't want to lose the moderates and the right-wingers who might be leaving the Trump ship. So what are we going to get? 30% from Newsom, 30% from whoever Trump picks? I legitimately think that a third party... Now, we're going to have to... If a third party is going to be viable, Trump will have to continue... He'll probably have to end up at a 30% approval rating because at that point, it's not even feasible. You can't transfer 30% of America into another person who's going to have an even lower approval rating than you because they're not as charismatic and because the base is not going to all jump ship. Some of them are just going to retire from politics together when Trump retires or dies. He's getting up there in age. And... same thing with the Democrats. Whoever they pick, the far left, which is 10% of the population, so 20% of the Democrats are going to say, we won't vote for him, we're going to stay at home, we'll only vote for Bernie Sanders or further left. And a lot of people won't even vote for Bernie Sanders. AOC is like the the least progressive person they would vote for. They'll only vote for more progressive than that. So I think it's gotta be a rich person. If there's going to be a third party that emerges, you need to have the, war disaster, the inflation disaster. You need the Republicans to actually tank their stock. You need the Democrats to pick kind of that middle-of-the-road guy that's not going to be interesting, that's not going to be charismatic. I think Newsom has the best shot in terms of just his personality. I think he'd be able to pull off some of the far left and some of the moderates, but even him. I think really any Democrat that I can see that has a legitimate, if you look at poly market, odds to win is going to be in between a rock and a hard place. They're going to be too far left to get the moderates, and they're going to be too far right to get the left-wingers. Every single question, they're going to have to think about, okay, how can I answer this? Whenever any trans stuff comes up, they're going to say, how can I answer this to get the moderates and to get the left wing? Because if you place too far to the center, then the left wing's not going to vote for you, and half the centrists are still going to probably vote for the Republican. So you lose. The third party needs to be rich. You need to be able to bankroll your entire campaign. These billionaire companies, these foreign countries that donate to our politicians, they're not going to donate to a third party, especially because they don't think it's viable. Why would you spend more money than you need to? They only want to donate to two people, or maybe one person if it's obvious who's going to win. So you need to be rich. And step two, and this is where it gets a little complicated, you need to own some sort of media channel, whether that's a Twitter or now X, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, etc. And when we look at those options, or CNN or Fox, you need to own at least one or be really good friends with the owner. And the reason why this is tricky is because, we obviously have the example of Elon Musk, who's very rich and owns a social media platform. But Elon Musk, it just isn't doing it. He just isn't doing it. There's no chance. He's not charismatic. He's not interesting. He doesn't really know that much about politics. And he's just not all that likable. You go look at Facebook. Could Mark Zuckerberg maybe do it? He's rich. He owns Instagram and Facebook, which is big. If you're going to be a third party, you're not going to get favorable media coverage on anything you don't own. So you can run ads. It's not going to be the best. But I think Mark Zuckerberg kind of has an outside shot to be kind of that third party. Now, the issue is he did support Trump in the last election, so a lot of Democrats are not going to go for that. A lot of liberals, a lot of progressives are saying, we can never vote for you. But he's got the money. Maybe a Mark Cuban, he's a Democrat, but kind of in the same boat as a Mark Zuckerberg, where it's like, yeah, Cuban's a Democrat. I guess Zuckerberg's now a Republican or a libertarian, whatever. These guys aren't really that political. They don't care as long as they get tax cuts. I could see maybe a Mark Cuban, a Mark Zuckerberg. They've got a lot of money. Now, Cuban doesn't have a social media platform, which hurts him because, the issue is, are the Democrats going to be friendly with you? Maybe. But, if you're running against a Gretchen Whitmer, they're not going to be friendly with you because they want her to win. The Republicans aren't going to be friendly because they're trying to push Marco Rubio. And it kind of stinks because you're going to get bleeped on every place you go. So, although I do think it is as likely as it's ever been, at least in my lifetime, a third-party candidate can win or be viable, maybe win a state, throw kind of make it interesting. I just don't know who it would be. You need to check off a couple boxes. I think if it's ever going to happen, it would be this election cycle because right now, both parties, they are cooked. The approval ratings are as low as they can get. And, in the last three elections, most of the voting has been, do you love Trump or do you hate Trump? Nobody's really voting on policy. Nobody really knows policy, let's be honest. And there isn't really a Republican Party and a Democratic Party. It's just been, do you love him or do you hate him? And that's where people are voting. So it's going to be interesting. Drop down in the comments who you think is going to be the 2028 presidential nominee.